evening and welcome to the St. Peter City Council meeting of June 13th, 2022. It is 7:00 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Would you please rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is approval of the agenda. The agenda is before us. Are there any changes or revisions to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved as distributed. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes are in the packet beginning on page 5 and concluding on page 9. Are there any revisions to the minutes as distributed? Carrie.
Just a little tiny typo under visitors, removing the 4 in officers on the third line down.
With that revision, is there a motion to approve the minutes as revised?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have 2 public hearings on the agenda today. The first one is for a registered land survey, number 75. The public hearing has been scheduled to consider a petition submitted by property owners Jamie and Cindy Putz for approval of registered land survey 79, which would provide for division of one parcel of land legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, standard subdivision into 2 separate conforming parcels. Notice of the hearing has been duly published in the St. Peter Herald, and abutting property owners have been notified as required by state statute. It's appropriate this time to receive public comment on the proposed land survey. Action to consider acceptance of the registered land survey is scheduled under new business, and that's on pages 39 to 42 of the packet. It does not appear to me that anybody is here to speak, but
Yep.
It's 7:03. The hearing is open, and
Typically, Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
there'd be a short staff report.
Sure.
And so I'm happy to do that for you. As the mayor indicated, the information starts on page 39. This is a request from the property owners who owned all of the property involved in this registered land survey and the request. This request has been reviewed by Planning and Zoning, and they have recommended that the council take affirmative action to approve the registered land survey through the resolution that's included on page 42. This essentially redraws the lot lines of this area, and it meets all of the standards, including the square foot standards that are required as a part of your subdivision ordinance. From a staff perspective, and what was reported to Planning and Zoning, is I don't see any technical reason to deny approval of this request. Again, it meets all of your subdivision standards. If I can, Madam Mayor, if there's no one here, typically this would be the time to have someone provide information if they wanted to.
hearing nobody or seeing nobody in the audience, we will take this up under new business. Barbara, do I need to close this public hearing and open the next one? It is 7:04 to close this one, and we will at 7:04 open up the next public hearing, which is a public hearing scheduled to consider a petition submitted by property owners Bob Vogel for acceptance of a certificate of survey that will allow for relocation of the interior lot line between 2 properties. Notice of the public hearing has been duly published in the St. Peter Herald, and abutting property owners have been notified as required by state statute. It's appropriate this time to receive public comment. I don't think we're going to have any, and we will consider acceptance of the land survey as scheduled under new business. That's on pages 43 through 47 of the packet. And Todd.
Mayor and members, the staff report would be that this has been reviewed by Planning and Zoning, and they are recommending approval. This is a lot, or 2 lots, that are located adjacent to Highway 169 with an intersecting roadway of West Chatham Street. This is a change in lot lines based on the owner. Again, there's one owner for both of these parcels, so the entirety of this is owned by one petitioner. And the modification does meet all of the comp plan subdivision rules and standards that are required within the city code.
Thank you. Seeing no comments from the public, we will close that hearing at 7:05. Next up, scheduled visitor comments on agenda items. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on an agenda item? Hearing none, general visitor comments. Members of the audience can address the council concerning items not on the agenda. Again, no visitors here. We're going to move on to approval of the consent agenda. Consent agenda begins on page 11 of the packet and concludes with the resolution that begins on page 34 and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. To Rickway Carpet for community center flooring replacement in the amount of $13,750. Retrofit Companies, Inc. for community center gym lighting in the amount of $12,990. The following 4 recreational seasonal employees, their names and titles and wages are listed in the packet. I'm not going to read them all. The following business licenses, which again, I'm not going to read all. They are on pages 34 and 35 of the packet. They are for on sale, off sale, Sunday sale, Wednesday, or wine sales, 3-2 beer on sale, 3-2 beer off sale, soft drink, tobacco, temporary on sale liquor, temporary soft drink, temporary show, and fireworks permits. Item number 4 on the consent agenda is the following equipment and or materials for which the city no longer has need are hereby declared as surplus property, and staff is directed to dispose of the materials as authorized in the city code. And the schedule of disbursements for May 19th, 2022 through June 8th, 2022. Does anybody have questions about any consent agenda item?
Mayor and members, I'd only point out one thing to highlight. This is the second month that you've seen some of the liquor licensing things. Usually it comes all at one time, but we had some applicants that were a little bit early and some that were a little bit late, so it's come to you in 2 separate packages. So you might recall seeing not these, but other liquor licenses at a previous meeting.
Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Wham.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston.
Aye.
Councilmember Rubenstein.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We have one item of unfinished business today, and that is the adoption of a resolution accepting Community Spirit Park Restrooms and Concession project, and Pete is here to talk about that.
Madam Mayor and members of the Community Spirit Park Restrooms and Concession area have been completed. The Salonic Construction out of Springfield did the work for us, and they did an outstanding job out there. We've worked with Salonic in the past with the Generation facility up on Broadway, so we were familiar with their quality work. My request tonight is that you authorize the final withholding of the project of $9,732.50. This equates out to a total project cost of $513,975.95, and that'll be divided into 2 areas. One for the school district's cost for Building A, which will be $326,423.37, and for the city building on the north end of $187,552.58. Olson and Hobby, our architect and designer of these facilities, is recommending approval of the final request, and we will move forward from this point and work with the school to final the project.
Thank you. Anything to add, Todd, or questions from council members? Carrie?
Were there any supply chain issues along the way for the contractor?
The only thing we had was a couple of sink and faucet connections out of that, which
Oh,
did keep it
interesting.
closed this spring for a little bit because we couldn't get them last fall, but they did get them in after about 3 months, and we got them in and ready to roll.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Daryl, did you have a question as well?
This is a bid project, I assume?
Yes, it was.
They have their IC-134s in hand?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
We collect all of that before we bring it to council, make sure it's ready for payment.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, the resolution is before us on page 38 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ray,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Our first item of new business is adoption of a resolution accepting the registered land survey number 79, which we had discussed under the public hearing. That memo begins on page 39 of the packet. Did you have anything further, Todd, or?
Mayor, members, I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. The resolution is included on 42 for this parcel that is located, or these parcels that are located in the standard subdivision.
Any questions regarding it?
Tract A will then be, Tract A is a buildable lot then, correct?
Under your subdivision rules, yes, sir.
But Tract B is not a buildable lot.
That's correct, sir. That'll be maintained in ownership by the Putzes. I can speak to their rationale for this. The rationale for this is that if you're familiar with, give me just a few moments and I'll kind of scroll up and show you the picture. There's a tree line here that they want to maintain under their control while selling the other lot. That's kind of their motivation. There are a number of different options that they could have used to pursue this, but this is the option that they chose to pursue, which is the registered land survey.
Cindy discussed this with me, so.
Wow, okay.
Hearing no additional questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ray,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Next up, we have adoption of a resolution accepting certificate of survey for the properties at 215 and 221 North Minnesota Avenue. Again, we had just had the public's hearing about that.
Mayor, members, this parcel is owned by Bob and Victoria Vogel, and I don't really have anything new to report. However, I'm going to put your city attorney on the spot. You might be wondering, well, we just had one that's a registered land survey, and now we have one that's a certificate of survey. They're kind of doing the same thing. What the heck? Why are there kind of two different names for this, Jim?
There's basically, in the real estate records, you got two separate tracks. You got an abstract tract and you've got a registered land survey tract. What happens is the registered land survey means the property owner took that tract of land to a court, and the court said, yeah, that's yours, you can transfer it by a certificate of title rather than transfer it by an abstract. That's essentially the difference. If you're going to divide lots in a Torrens or registered land situation, you need to go through registered land survey. You may have heard the term Torrens in the past. It's the same as registered lands. It's just another term for it, but that's why it's different. And in the old part of town, most of your stuff is on abstract. In the newer part of town, oftentimes things are done in registered land surveys. For example, the 3 surveys the city did, Nicollet Meadows, Washington Terrace, and now Traverse Green, were all done under the Torrens system, so that we now deliver those by certificates held in the registered registrar's office in the courthouse. That's the difference.
Interesting.
Just wanted you to know, similar parallel processes, a little bit different name. This one too has been reviewed by planning and zoning and recommended for your approval.
I have a question.
Daryl.
There'll be no easement lines or drainage easements along that new interior lot line then, correct?
Correct, and the alley that was there previously had been vacated, so you're correct though, Daryl, there's nothing new placed there.
Carrie.
As citizens navigate the process when they make these types of requests, did they, to our city staff kind of help them determine what's needed, or do they have to get an attorney, or what's the process?
So we do our best to help them along, but in these instances, I don't think Either of these folks utilized legal counsel. In both of these, they would have utilized a surveying company to provide adequate information to make this move forward.
Thank you.
In the second one, we've got an ordinance that you can't subdivide lots without approval. So that's why you got to plat it. In this case, if you're less than, I think it's 3, you're dividing less than 2 lots into a third lot, you can do it by this process. So otherwise, this is more of a waiver of subdivision than it is anything else.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, the resolution before us on page 64, accepting certificate of survey submitted by Robert and Victoria Vogel to allow for relocation of interior property line between 215 North Minnesota Avenue and 221 North Minnesota Avenue. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpsburg,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
The resolution is approved. And I see we have Paula here to talk with us about the adoption of a resolution approving Rivers Edge Hospital request for purchase of equipment, a bariatric table.
Thank you. Mayor and council members, I am coming tonight to seek approval for the purchase of a Steris 5095 bariatric surgical table. This has extenders, it has a cart for storage of the extenders and a safety strap. The purchase price of the table is $54,392.92. That does include shipping and handling. It includes 1-year warranty. After that point in time, it would go to our biomed group as part of the contract for just monitoring and repair as needed. This table would replace one of our current surgical tables, which is at end of life, which is 25 plus years old, and we're no longer able to get parts to replace that. One of the things that's significant about this table, it is a bariatric size table. Our current table has the capability to hold the bariatric weight of any patients we would do. This is a wider table, so the scenario that I gave to the hospital commission is if you're 5 feet tall and weigh 250 pounds, you're a little bit wider than somebody who's 6'5", weighing the same weight. So just a little wider with that, and so it will be safer for our patients. We also are looking ahead to any new service lines that we might be able to bring into play and equipment that we may need for that, and it is a table that would accommodate future services and future equipment. So it's a generic use table, and there's nothing that we could find that we wouldn't be able to use that for. Specifically, we looked at robotics, so if we were looking at a new robotic service line, we would be able to use that for with the table. We are looking at this from the Steris vendor. Again, the price is $54,392.92, and we would use hospital funds to purchase the table.
Any questions for Paula?
Mayor and members, just as a reminder, your code requires that Paula come to visit with you for purchases, capital purchases of this type that are over $50,000, and she's been very faithful to that, so we appreciate that. It's always nice to see her.
Daryl?
This was approved by the hospital commission at the last meeting also.
Yes, thank you.
The resolution before us on page 49 calls for approval of the purchase of Steris 5095 bariatric surgical table for Rivers Edge Hospital and Clinic. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpsburg,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you very much.
Paula.
Thanks for coming,
Thank you.
Next up, we have adoption of a resolution approving execution of renewal maintenance partnership agreement with Mndot. Oh, Pete.
Mayor and members, as you have before you, there is an agreement that starts on page 52 and continues until page 68 that really is the map of how we work with Mndot. It's been in effect since 1996. We've worked with Mndot on a variety of projects since that time. I think St. Peter has really benefited from having a mutual aid agreement with these guys, not necessarily in the mutual aid point of view, but necessary in how we describe our work with them and how we work with them. Really, it's about a couple different things. It's really about utilizing staff in an efficient manner, and that's both Mndot staff and our staff. It's about working on projects jointly, who's going to do what, why, and where. And it's really about helping each other, and that's what's made it successful. It's a means to the activities that we perform, and we have had a very good relationship with Mndot throughout the length of the previous agreements. This agreement also authorizes our city engineer to act on our behalf, which is Jeff Domros out of Bolton and Mink. And he does quite a few things with us, all the way from state aid funding to a variety of different projects with Mndot, and this would allow him to act on our behalf. Is there anything on the agreement that you guys would like to talk about? Otherwise, we're asking for approval of the resolution on page 69.
Mayor, members, I will mention that this, I believe, is the fourth iteration or third iteration of this we go through on a five-year cycle.
Basis, yep.
Yeah, and so this is not new to us. This is a renewal, for, at least from our perspective.
Questions for Pete or for Todd? I'll only comment to say I don't have the history going back to 1996, but in my experience on the council the last few years, I would absolutely agree with Pete that St. Peter benefits greatly from having a good relationship with Mndot, and so I'm really grateful for city staff who cultivated that and maintained that relationship. All right, hearing no questions, the resolution is before us on page 69 of the packet. It's calling for authorization of a Minnesota Department of Transportation Master Partnership Contract for 2022 through 2027. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Call that a first and a second?
Second.
All right. Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Restrooms,
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefire,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rennie.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pete. Our final piece of business tonight, adoption of a resolution approving ADA Grant Program Award recipients, and the memo begins on page 70 of the packet.
It does, Madam Mayor and members. I believe this is the third cycle of ADA grants that has been put in place. I'll remind the council that this really started from a goal session a few years ago with City Council, who wanted to really move forward on promoting opportunity for accessibility in the historic downtown. And so the difference in this cycle as compared to two previous cycles is that the two previous cycles were really focused on the historic business district, or what sometimes we call the central business district. As you may recall, in reviewing whether you wanted to do another cycle, it was the suggestion and agreed to by the council that we would expand it outside of the central business district to other commercial and business properties within St. Peter, and so that was done, and a process was undertaken, and at the end of April, applications were due. At that time, we received 12 or 13 applications. The reason I'm hedging a little bit is because we received 12 on time and one late, so that made the 13. The late one wasn't considered, but I wanted to mention that as a part of the process. An ad hoc committee is established utilizing folks from the Economic Development Authority, the HPC, and Planning and Zoning, and they review the applications. As I mentioned in the memo, normally those applications are reviewed based on a number of different criteria, but prioritization is provided for people through the door. We're looking to increase accessibility, and so that's certainly a major factor in how the committees look at this. In addition to that, its total overall budget, which was established and recommended by the EDA and approved by the council, of a little bit over $25,000. In the previous two cycles, and actually in this cycle, that was kind of indexed against what the interest we thought we would get from revolving loan pool with the EDA. So that demonstrates the interest, and that's the approximate budget for that. I will mention this time that the subcommittee, the ad hoc committee, and the EDA reviewed this and are recommending that you provide approval for actually more than the budget amount. which was again about just about $25,500, and recommending that you approve approximately $34,000 in handicap grants for 5 different businesses. As a party to both the discussions at the ad hoc level and at the EDA level, the ad hoc committee really looked at this and developed 3 tiers, a higher priority, a mid, and a low priority. What they saw in this is that clearly 5 of the applicants were in that top tier. However, funding at $25,300 did not cover all of those, and so they are really, I think it's fair to say that certainly if you go to page 70 and 71, they first believe that the Legion, the Eye Care Center, the Nicolet County Ag Society, and Subway should be the first recipients. But if you are amenable to providing extra funds, again from about $25,000 to $34,000, they would like to include Jake's Pizza as a part of that. And you can see the individual estimated costs as we move forward. And so that's how the resolution is drawn, because that's the recommendation from the EDA to the City Council. Certainly you could deviate from that if you chose to. I think one other thing that's important to note is that this program has been established, and so while it's a grant, it kind of looks like a loan. And so really a promissory note is signed by the folks who are receiving the loan, and 1/15 of it is forgiven every year for a term of obviously then 15 years, at which time it becomes a grant. Our goal in establishing it that way originally was to help ensure that there was at least a little bit of teeth to make sure that folks are maintaining the grant that they were given by maintaining the door or the opener or the ramp or whatever it is. All of these are electric door openers. They just happen to be, not all of the grants over the years have been that, but these happen to be all of that nature. I'm happy to answer any questions that members might have. Again, this was recommended by the EDA, so these 5, including the additional budgetary funds to about $34,000. The resolution's in your packet, Madam Mayor, on page 72.
Questions for Todd, Daryl?
Do we have the dollars in the fund?
Yeah, so that's certainly one of the considerations that the EDA looked at, and right now, even including using the additional $8,000 or so, you have about $2.1 million in the fund. So you certainly have enough resources to provide for this without struggling too much.
Do you record like a second mortgage against them for the grant or not? Is it like
Daryl, let me think. I believe actually we do against these,
It's
yeah.
like the small cities grants or whatever you record.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a typical like a second
Yeah.
mortgage, but it's
So we
with
record
us.
the mortgage. Yeah,
Thank you.
in whatever position it ends up. So you said second, but it could be 3rd or 4th down the line, but yes.
Always subordinate.
Yeah.
Carrie, and then Emily.
So of these 5 businesses, 3 of them, if I'm correct, are outside the central business district?
Yes, that's correct.
So the point I wanted to make is, and I serve on the EDA as a liaison, is that opening up the opportunity, open this up for other businesses to partake in this, and I think it's really a benefit for the community that we have so much interest every year in this program. Thank you.
Emily?
I was gonna make a similar comment in that just, isn't this the most applicants we've had in this at
This-
one time?
Yeah, I think last time we had 7 or 8, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seemed, when you said 13, I'm like, wow, that was way more than what I remember from last time. So that's really great to see.
Yeah, you know, in the second cycle, we struggled a little bit because of supply chain issues to get everybody done. And in fact, we still have 1 from the second cycle that I just talked to this last week, who's finally got the stuff and they're getting ready to go. So these will move along hopefully a little bit more quickly. Let me mention one other criteria. We did this time have applicants that were applying for what one could consider, and the ad hoc committee did consider, as being a second handicap entry. So we do have some that already had one and they were applying for a second one. Those were in 2nd or 3rd tier, as I described the tiers previously, but it's great that they're interested in moving that forward. And I think certainly demonstrates value, or their perceived value, to their business or organization. You guys are kind of the only ones doing this, by the way. I got to mention that. We try and listen pretty closely, and there might be someone else out there that's doing this kind of thing. But based on our discussions with the Minnesota State Historical Society and others, I don't think there are any other communities that are doing this kind of thing to help businesses, certainly in a historic district, be handicap accessible.
Brad?
I think one of the advantages St. Peter has is the revolving loan fund and being able to tap the interest, and I like that. I am happy that the committee recommended another project on top of it, and I was advocating for that. Obviously, we don't want to break the bank, but another $8,800 project on top of what was going, I think is a good investment. You know, someplace like Jake's Pizza is definitely a high volume, and could use something like that.
It's great. I mean, I think oftentimes we talk about this as how wonderful it is for the business. That's like secondary. How wonderful it is for people in your community to have access to everything they want to have access to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Emily.
Sorry, I've been using a lot more of the push buttons with my slowed
Oh,
down
sure.
tempo these last several weeks. So I've appreciated and noticed the places in town that have the buttons and those that don't. So another bonus from that perspective.
Well, and those of us with families who've had kids in strollers and things like that greatly benefit them, benefit from accessibility as well. So I think accessibility, first and foremost, serves the people who need it, but really serve our greater community as well. So it's a terrific program, and really glad that the EDA is doing this good work.
Resolutions included in your packet on page 71.
It is indeed. There are no further questions. I will look for a motion and a second to approve the resolution awarding 2022 Central Business District and Commercial District Accessibility Improvement Loans.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rank,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We are moving on to reports. The only thing I have to report on would be to extend thanks to everybody who contributed to the Blues Fest this weekend. It was excellent, record-breaking crowds by the sounds of it. And so, you know, thanks to everybody who contributed to that, and great to see people coming to visit St. Peter. So, your turn, Todd.
Madam Mayor, I have one issue that's listed and one other issue that I'd just like to mention. First of all, goal session review. I have not sat down or had time to write the report from that, but certainly your goal session packet is online. You had a great presentation, I think, from SIMPA, and provided a lot of wonderful information about the targets and the goals and their progress in moving towards a more renewable energy mix. So we want to make people aware of that. There's some wonderful graphics in the packet and some information that was passed out to the council, so I think that's super helpful. We also talked about the potential for solar development, and Pete articulated the timeline that thought that would be on. We continue to focus on trying to help Gustavus if there's a partnership to be had there, but certainly doing something near the wastewater treatment plant that the council's discussed on a number of occasions. We did a short review of property cleanup, and as you know, we have a few properties in town that need some additional help. And so we talked a little bit, just a very little bit, about what your rules are and how we try and help people along and the enforcement that we undertake. We did not really visit much about DEI or ARP funding. We did talk about, and Sally made a presentation on enterprise funding, really focusing on that next stage of opportunity for you, is talking about debt, how your debt is going away, but then how in the future you have capital plans that mean you have other expenditures that will be coming up in the future. So it's not all good news. Some of it is business news, and that we have other improvements that you're going to have to make, and that you continue to move forward as a part of the council process. And so it's important to know how all that works with your overall financials. This will result within the next month or two in coming back and development of a policy related to reserves or targeted reserves amount within your primary enterprise funds. So watch for that. You had a great discussion about that, and I think the council understands where we're going with that. If not, there'll be another swing at the plate with that, but we want to make sure that we're covering that appropriately. We had a great discussion about updating housing and the housing activity that the council's undertaking, not only for rentals, but single family. And it is very clear that the council understands there's an important need for additional housing within our community, and you're doing what you can do to try and stimulate that and make that move forward. So I thought that was a wonderful discussion. We talked a little bit about the North Industrial Park, about comprehensive plan and the cycle you're likely on for what I would call a rewrite of your comprehensive plan, likely in the 23 or 24 year. and how climate change can impact that, and maybe a separate climate change plan, or maybe associated with that comprehensive plan. We discussed organizational health, a little bit about your communications, and in the middle of all that, you had about a 45-minute to an hour break for the summer celebration event that was going on in Gorman Park, which was like really well attended. And you had a great chance to get some food at one of the food trucks that was here and just see people galore, families galore. So that was kind of fun to have that break and be able to see folks. I'll have a little bit more formal written report coming up at a future meeting that will outline, it's not really minutes, but kind of what I talked about right here, and for posterity, so we can refer back to it in the future. Other than that, if you or members have any other comments about goal session, happy to answer, with one exception. If you want me to make sure that it always coincides with an event at Gorman Park, I don't think I can make that happen for you, but happy to try anything else.
Any comments, Brad?
Well, I think just a comment about the event at Gorman Park Todd had mentioned. I think what I thought was great about it was the opportunity to quite honestly see our changing community and seeing what the young families in this community look like and the changing demographics. I thought that was actually a really nice thing to be able to observe, and Todd was the first one who made the comment. I think that's it was great.
Any other comments? I'll just chime in since we're talking about parks. I'm going to go back to Blues Fest and say how beautiful Minnesota Square Park
Yeah,
is
Pete and his crew have worked hard. Pete and Joel and the crews work hard.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. It's great to see all the plans coming together, and back to accessibility. The accessibility of Minnesota Square Park has been greatly enhanced by those trails. I just can't speak highly enough of it. So,
one of my former students who's in a wheelchair, actually, that was the first thing she said when she saw me, is just how transformative this is.
yeah. It's a good thing to reflect on when people get a little concerned when we're taking away green space and adding those trails, but really, they're really enhancing they're enhancing accessibility in our community. There we go, Carrie.
I was just going to say another event that was happened over the weekend was Casting with a Cop, which was the 4th annual event. And Officer John Hughes did a lot of coordinating for that, along with partner organizations, and there's a lot of community involvement. There's some really cute pictures on Facebook on the St. Peter Police Department Facebook page, so you should check that out.
We have lots of businesses that donate a pole here, fishing tackle there, bait, all those kind of things. So it's a really great community effort for sure.
Yeah. If you can't find something to do on the weekends in St. Peter from like June to August, you are not looking hard enough. There's a lot of terrific things.
Well, and then there's an event on, I believe it's on Saturday. It's
Yep.
Juneteenth at the St. Peter High School. So commemorating and celebrating that nationally recognized holiday. So look for info on that.
Yeah, if you haven't participated in Juneteenth before, it's a great opportunity to learn more about it. It's another great day to celebrate freedom in the United States, and so definitely check that out. I'll be there.
I don't have any. Oh, I do have one other workshop. Your workshop on Monday night is going to be at the hospital, so it will be at the same time at 5:30. Folks will enter through the main door, what we sometimes call the emergency room door. Paul, is that fair? You'll need to have a mask, surgical kind of mask, and Paul had mentioned earlier that they might have a couple, but please come prepared for that. And then there'll be a tour of the hospital as a part of that as well. That's all that I have.
All right. Any other reports before we're looking for a motion to adjourn? All right, a motion to adjourn. And a second?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, that's a good week to have a short meeting. I'll go to the other side of the park now. Go back there.
Softball.